Hi viewers, another episode of Guest Nazir. We are honored. Today's honorable guest is a very experienced ex-overseas Pakistani, but nowadays is serving in Pakistan. He's running an institute which helps democracy, democratic institutions, legislation, which is only and only built out. And our honorable guest is Mr. Ahmed Bilal Mehboob. Welcome in our show.
Thank you very much, Nazir Saab, for having me, and I'm honored to be on your show. Thank you.
Mr. Ahmed, please tell our viewers about your childhood and your early days.
Well, my childhood was mainly spent in a small place in southern Punjab called Rahim Yar Khan. Finally, I came to Lahore to do my engineering. I'm basically an engineer, civil engineer. I served as a civil engineer for good 25 years. Initially in Pakistan, then in Middle East, then for a short while in the United States of America. And almost after 25 years of engineering career, I decided to do something which I always wanted to do. I was an engineer mainly because most of the people like me in my age group, their parents used to decide, fathers used to decide mostly what the career they will choose. So my father chose for me engineering career. So I did my engineering, practiced my engineering for good 25 years. And then I moved into something which I always wanted. Uh, Politics, but a very serious side of politics, political research, and developing some way to strengthen politics, democracy, and democratic institutions in Pakistan. And that is what brought me to PILDAT.
Please tell our viewers what stands for PILDAT and what are main objectives of your organization.
PILDAT stands for Pakistan Institute for Legislative Development and Transparency. As the name suggests, we basically, the purpose was to strengthen democracy and democratic institutions by supporting legislatures of Pakistan, which means Pakistan's National Assembly, its Senate, its provincial assemblies, and also the legislative assemblies of Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. And since we did not have in our assemblies and legislatures a proper, at least at the time when we started, we did not have a proper system to provide research, orientation, and briefing to members of parliament. So we thought we will start doing this and filling the vacuum. And that's what we did. And then after initial 10 years, we started looking at the performance of the National Assembly, Senate, and Provincial Assembly. So that is what my organization does. We look at democracy, democratic institutions, and the quality of governance in Pakistan.
So, which year you set up this organization?
This organization was set up in 2001.
So, when you started, how many people joined you, or it was your single man, one man army, or it was a group of people who has started it?
No, it was not a one-man army. There were a lot of people, especially a group of overseas Pakistanis, because the basic seeds of these organizations were planted when I was working overseas. And a number of my overseas colleagues spread all over the country, all over the world, Europe, North America, Middle East, Australia, New Zealand even. These countries where Pakistanis were present, they became members of an organization called Institute of Overseas Pakistanis. So we tried to do something in Pakistan in the field of education and in some other fields, but soon we realized that until we address the basic systemic issues of the country, how country is performing in terms of a democratic, modern, rule of law state, we will not be able to take it forward in the context of education or healthcare or anything else. So we, then some of these 35 people, 20 of us, we moved towards establishing this organization called Pakistan Institute of Legislative Development and Transparency, which primarily is to address the political issues and political shortcomings or drawbacks of Pakistan in our own modest way.
So, in terms of your services, do you provide any direct services to the government, or you are directly providing services to the member of legislative assemblies?
No, we do not work for the government of Pakistan. We have been independently working, and we directly deal with the legislatures. Since legislatures are an independent institution, distinct from the executive, so we had been dealing with the National Assembly of Pakistan, with the Senate, with the four provincial assemblies, and as I said earlier, with the legislative assemblies of Azad Jammu and Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. So we had been, most of the time, we had been approaching these legislatures through their elected speakers, our chairman in the case of Senate, and sometimes we directly also approach the members of these legislatures. But that was that used to be our major activity until about 2010. For about 8-9 years, we had been focusing mostly on legislative development, which is briefing the members of parliament, giving them orientation, and providing them research. But in 2009, Pakistan's parliament created an institution called PIPS, Pakistan Institute of Parliamentary Services, which is an act of parliament created under an act of parliament. We also tried to, in a modest way, contribute in its coming into being. So now most of these briefings, etc., are being done by PIPS. So what we do as PILDAT, we try to do only those subjects which are not taken up by PIPS. But most of our work now is to look at the performance of Parliament from a citizen's point of view. That how is our National Assembly performing? How are the provincial assemblies performing? And we every year, at the end of a parliamentary year, we issue a report which gives the basic statistics about the working of the parliament, working of the provincial assemblies, working of the legislative assemblies.
So your institution is also working on the historical elections also. So when we talk about the very first, I will say, the election 1958, what was your observation as an organization? So was they conducted properly, or there was some issues? These were election between Mohtarama Fatima Jinnah versus Ayub Khan.
Yeah, of course, my organization was not present at that time. But since we look at the history and try to learn from history, so those elections in many ways were not only unfair, they were unjust too, because of the fact that a system was created to hold those elections. That system was called basic democracies, which many people in Pakistan believed at that time, and now probably a greater number of people believe that that was not a system which in any, I think in classical sense, was a democracy. It was selected only 80,000 people who would then elect the provincial and national governments. So I think the system was designed in a way to support General Ayub Khan. So that's why it was something which I do not think it was fair, and that set the tone of our democracy in a very wrong direction.
So recently you have observed, your organization has observed these elections. I'm talking about these two recent elections, 2013 and 2018. Can election be called unfair just on the basis of a small irregularity?
No, I don't think an election can be termed as a whole unfair and unjust or rigged just because there had been irregularities in localized context. So that was the case for 2013 election, that I think it was the most scrutinized election in the history of Pakistan, because a judicial commission was formed. A judicial commission of inquiry was created after an agreement between the ruling party at that time, which was Pakistan Muslim League Nawaz, and the opposition party which was agitating against the result of the election, which was Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf (PTI), Mr. Imran Khan's party. So after the agitation, it was finally agreed, and then a judicial commission was created. Judicial commission did a very thorough investigation and scrutiny of the 2013 election. It concluded that the result of the election represented the will of the people in general. But having said so, they said that in many places there are a lot of improvements which are needed, like training of the election staff, the polling staff. These kind of things need to improve, and especially the scrutiny of the nomination papers should be done in a more scientific manner. So they gave almost, I think, 40 suggestions, which the election commission was to following with the subsequent election. But primarily its finding was that the result of 2013 election was fair, and it reflected the will of the people. But in 2018 election, I think the story was a bit different. No such scrutiny was carried out. But if you ask my view is that in 2018, if you can divide this election in three segments: the pre-poll segment, the polling day segment, and the counting and the post-poll segment. So the pre-poll segment was about more than a year ago before the polls. More than a year before the polls, one can see preparations to make sure that a particular political party is not able to win the election, which at that time public opinion polls indicated that PMLN will win the election in 2018. But there are certain indications which shows that a targeted campaign was done to make that political party lose election and make other political party win the election. And this was not done by, I think, changing the votes or rigging. This was done by changing public opinion in a systematic manner. But on the day of polling, I think they were quite orderly polls, fair polls. But there was some, in my opinion, some problem in the counting of votes too. The collapse of result transmission system, which was supposed to make the election system very fair. The counting and tabulation could have become very fair, but in a very mysterious way, the result transmission system collapsed. And then many people said at the time of counting that their polling agents were turned out. They were not allowed to sit through the counting of the ballots, which was against the rules and system of election. So these two things created some doubts, but unfortunately no thorough investigation or scrutiny could be organized as it was done in the 2013 election case.
But in 2018, people and the whole world has observed that a planned campaign was started against a particular party. Then certain judgments was announced, and then NAB came active, and then all of a sudden, all these things happened, and only it was against one party. Do you think that these practices has caused a lot of damage to the political system and also the integrity of the elections?
Certainly, these are, circumstantial evidences, circumstantial chain of events which started well before 2018 election. And some of the things have some evidence which had been coming in the media, but I'm not very sure whether we can call it a very solid evidence. But as I said, it's a circumstantial evidence which indicates, one can put two and two together, that in a very systematic manner, more than a year before the election, the things had started moving in a direction which were meant to make a political party lose the election. And therefore, I consider that a pre-poll manipulation of the election. I don't have a proof for that, but many people believe that this was something which was happening. Because in the previous elections, these things had been happening, for which there was probably more solid proof were available. But in the collapse of result transmission system, and in the counting, further evidence piled up, which probably indicates that 2018 election also had certain doubts in their fairness. But as I said, since there was no judicial commission was formed, so one cannot say with complete certainty that what went wrong with the elections.
So now we are moving forward because of the time restraints. So we have seen a lot of judicial activism in the recent past, especially during former two chief justices. How your institute see it, especially in the democratic system, and at the same time, you have observed and you have seen that elected prime minister has been say goodbye with the help of Article 1843 of 1973 Constitution.
That's true. I think all this thing, what you're pointing at, was very well summed up in a speech which was given by one of the former Chief Justices of Pakistan, Mr. Asif Saeed Khosa. When he was about to take over the position of Chief Justice of Pakistan, he, just at the farewell reference for his predecessor, Chief Justice, he made a speech. It's a historic speech. It's, I think, a very good speech for the people who try to study the interinstitutional relationship in Pakistan. And he said, he admitted in that the various institutions of the state are trespassing into the territory of other institutions. He specifically mentioned that judiciary at times trespasses into the territory of executive and even sometime of the legislature, and similarly other institutions. And he mentioned even intelligence agencies and even the armed forces also among those institutions. And he then suggested that there should be an interinstitutional dialogue under the patronage of the President of Pakistan, in which judiciary, executive, and legislature should be represented at the summit level. And therefore, I think it's very clear that there had been instances where judicial activism had been playing a role beyond what probably is the spirit of the Constitution. So that, I think, was very well summed up by someone who was an insider of the judiciary, and he could very well say all these things with certainty.
So recently, at the moment, a debate is going on, especially about the 18th Amendment in the 1973 Constitution. So what is this all debate about, especially for our international viewers? So a lot of headlines have been given in the media, a lot of talks are going on. So what is it all about in a very short summarized way, please?
I think 18th Amendment is a very important amendment in the sense that it has changed one way or the other, 1/3 of the Constitution. So therefore, it should have been debated very openly and for extended periods of time in the Parliament. Unfortunately, it did not happen, although committee worked for almost 1 year. But committee was not substitute for the full Parliament. 2 days debate took place in the National Assembly, and this debate continued for about 4 days in the Senate, and that's about it. So various political parties could not even discuss it within their own institutions. So I think since it was not debated extensively, sufficiently, therefore, even after its passage, many questions arise, and still many questions arise. Many people are not satisfied some aspects of the 18th Amendment, but since it was constitutionally passed by 2/3 majority in the both houses of Parliament, so therefore it's a legitimate piece of legislation. It's a part of the Constitution. It can only be changed through another constitutional amendment. But yes, there is a lot of questions keeps arising. People think that probably too much provincial autonomy was conceded. I personally think that there was not sufficient provisions made for the local government system, and provinces, the devolution of powers which had come from the center to the provinces stopped there. It did not go down to the grassroots level. So I think there were some weaknesses which should be addressed in the times to come.
So why the provincial government are not giving powers to the local governments, I'm talking about the city government, like a consular system or Nazim system. So why they are reluctant to do that?
Simply for the reason that they have the powers in their hands. The whole powers are concentrated in the hands of the chief minister or the provincial government, and they do not want to part with it. They do not want that there should be decisions about spending of money should be made at any other place than the chief minister's office. So therefore, they're always very reluctant, and it's not about the current government alone. It's about any government in the past. They had been dragging their feet in giving powers to local government. Last time local government elections took place, only after Supreme Court ordered them to hold election. But even then, they created the laws in such a way that they were not meaningful local government with authority. So I think basically it's the power game. I wish 18th Amendment, when it was being drafted, someone should have added basic outline of the local government system, so local government would not have been in such unfortunate situation as it is now.
Your institution has observed and seen these recent two elections, 2013 and 2018. In the light of all the elections, so what suggestion you will give to the Election Commission of Pakistan that in the next election, so people don't need to talk about, just people say, it is fantastic, it's wonderful election?
I think Election Commission is a very powerful institution. It has all the authority. Force of the law is behind it. The Chief Election Commissioner and the members of the Election Commission, they are appointed through a bipartisan process. The leader of the House and leader of the opposition have to consult. And this is an ideal system which I think many countries would like to have, but they do not have. Pakistan is fortunate that they have this bipartisan system. I think the only thing remaining is, like in India at one time, the Chief Election Commissioner, Mr. Sishan, he had put his foot down and he guarded the independence and the authority of the Election Commission, and that changed the entire scenario after that. I remember Mr. M.S. Gill, who used to be a member of the Election Commission in India. He once visited Pakistan at our invitation, and he narrated here that before Mr. Sishan, Election Commission of India was a very submissive institution, but it became a strong institution because the Chief Election Commissioner started using the powers which Constitution gave him. So I think in Pakistan, I wish the Chief Election Commissioner starts putting his foot down and uses the powers which the Constitution has given them. That's the only thing remaining. Otherwise, I think we have very good law, very good Constitution, very good system of selection, and a very powerful Election Commission.
Mr. Ahmed, thank you very much for joining me. I hope the Election Commission of Pakistan has taken this message that they have to put foot down and work hard for the next coming election. Keep watching Sheffield Live TV. Keep watching Guest with Nazir. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ahmed.
Thank you very much. It was a wonderful exchange. Thank you.